Hey guys, Neely here, and I am coming in for a video on how I make my fermented pickles. This is a traditionally fermented recipe. A lot of modernly made pickles are made with vinegar, and then they're canned, which means there's lots of heat involved, which kill off all the beneficial bacteria and the probiotics and all the natural goodness that comes with the fermented pickles. So this is a very old-fashioned type recipe and gets lots of nutrients in the pickles. And I am just going to show you how I do it each year, and I am going to link to the recipe that I originally followed when I first started making pickles. It's from the herbgardener.com, and it's a great recipe, very basic, wonderful recipe. And so if you're looking for exact measurements of things, you can go there. And because I kind of just throw things in now, it doesn't have to be exact. So I have my pickling cucumbers here. These littler ones are from our garden, and I picked up a few of these bigger ones. They were 10 for $10. So, or I mean 10 for $1, not for $10. And so I got 10 of those. So I spent about $1 on cucumbers, besides the ones that were in the garden. And I'm gonna go ahead and just do a ½ gallon of pickles right now. There will be extra left over. I'll do another jar or so in a little bit, but for this demonstration, I'm gonna go ahead and just do the ½ gallon. Now the first thing I add is grape leaves, and this is, grape leaves have something in them called tannin, and that helps the pickle stay crispy. You don't want to have a gummy, gooey pickle, but these will help your pickles stay crispy. And there are a few other options if you don't have access to grape leaves. Oak leaves, cherry leaves, and a few other options. You can look in the link that I provided below if you want to find out the other options. But I just put a couple leaves in the jar like this. And then I'm gonna add my onions and garlic. These are some onions from my yard, from my garden, and they're some green onions that got a little bit overgrown. So I'm gonna throw these in. You can use any kind of onion you want, and I'm just gonna throw in a handful like that. That should be enough. And then garlic cloves, of course. I'm just gonna throw in 3 or 4 of these. They're on the bottom. And now I'm gonna do the spices. I have whole coriander seed, whole dill seed, and whole mustard seed, and these are the 3 that I like to use. The other option you can use is some pickling spice. There's pickling spice mixes that you can buy, and this has a few other things added to it, and it's fine, but I prefer the simpler, just these 3 spices. That's plenty enough for us. And so I'm just gonna throw in a little bit. Like I said, if you want some exact measurements, you can check those out in the link below. Dill seed and coriander seed. And then also I'm gonna put in some full heads of dill. And I got these from our local produce market. You buy them in like the big, tall stalks of dill. They're really, really big, but I just cut off the tops, and I'm just gonna throw those down in there. And now it's time to pack in my pickles. I like to put all the toppings or the spices and things on the bottom because you don't want those to be floating to the top of the brine. If you have stuff floating above the brine, it can grow mold, so you want everything submerged. So it's nice to have all the spices down at the bottom. They kind of stay submerged a little better. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and start packing in these pickles however I can get them to fit. All right, so I got them packed in there. It's kind of like a puzzle where you try to just fit in as much as you can and get them to fit best you can. And I didn't want to fill it all the way to the top because, like I said, the brine needs to go over the top and have everything submerged, and there has to be room to have the thing that I use to keep everything down, and I'll show you that in a minute. There are a lot of different ways that you can keep everything submerged. You can buy weights. There are a few different options, but I'll show you what I do. And then now I'm just gonna do the brine. The ratio of water to salt for the brine is 1 quart of water, warm water, to 1½ tablespoons of salt. So I'm just gonna put in 1½ tablespoons and then stir it till it dissolves. And this is the salt that I use, the real salt. It's not like an iodized salt that has dextrose added to it. It's just a real salt with all the great minerals in it. Now I'm just going to stir it up a little bit till it dissolves. All right, now I'm just gonna pour this in. This should be about enough brine for this size of a jar of pickles, but it's gonna vary, you know, based on how many pickles are in there and such. So had got almost all of it in there, and that's about enough. And now I will show you how I press everything down to keep it submerged, because these pickles will like to raise to the surface if they're able. So you want to keep them down so they stay below the brine. Now, like I said, there are a lot of different ways to submerge the pickles and keep them down. The link I will link to below has their own way that they do it, and this is just the way that I found works for me, and it's always given me a great result, so that's what I do, but it's not the only way, of course. So I have these little cups, and I just like to, and this might overflow a little bit, I like to use those and press it down so it's keeping the pickles down, and then I put on one of these plastic lids, and these plastic lids let a little bit more air through than like the metal lids, the rings, and so plenty of air gets through, so I don't have to worry about this exploding, but you want it to have a little bit of airflow. So that's how I do it, and you can see the little silver jar in there pressing down the cucumbers, and everything is below the brine. Some of the spices will float up to the top, and the spices aren't that big of a deal. I've never had a problem with mold from a spice or two floating to the top, so don't worry about that, but you just don't want to have any pickles or onions or garlic floating to the top there. So now the fermentation begins, and I like to do my pickles for 2 weeks. You can play with how long you like to ferment it. Basically, you just leave it at room temperature. You can leave it on the counter somewhere a little bit dark, just, you know, anywhere that's convenient for you to leave it for a couple of weeks. And through the magic of television, I have this jar of pickles that I started about 2 weeks ago, so it's just now done, and I have not opened any of these yet. I have a couple others over here. This is a sliced. I had some bigger cucumbers, so I sliced them. You can do that, or you can also do the spears. Sometimes when it's really airtight, it'll sizzle when you open it, but this wasn't airtight enough to do that. But that's what they look like after about 2 weeks, and they're crispy. Oh, I can't even break it open. There you go. It's crispy and delicious and a yummy pickle. So that's it. So you can do peas, you can do zucchini, you can do green tomatoes. That's also another one that's very good. Almost anything. You can do carrots, and you can play around with the different seasonings if you don't want the typical dill. I've done the peas with just fresh basil with the brine, same as the brine I use for the pickles. And there's so many options. You can pickle almost anything, to cauliflower or zucchini, all that stuff. And then, of course, since these are not canned, you cannot can fermented pickles. If you do, it's going to kill all the wonderful enzymes. So you do have to store these in the fridge. So after the fermentation process of about 2 weeks, or however long you want to ferment them, then you transfer them to the fridge, and they will stay good in the fridge for over a year. I actually have some left over from last year, some spicy ones that I made for my husband that he didn't eat quickly enough. So they last a long time, and they do get better with age. So the flavors just intensify. Also, the other thing you can do, like I said, I made spicy pickles. You can add peppers, jalapenos, habaneros, any kind of hot peppers that you want to add. That's going to give it amazing flavor. So that's it, guys. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and definitely check out the link below to the original recipe that I followed for all of the measurements and stuff if you want to use those. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye, guys.